Lyon. My name is Emmanuel. I am the organizer for the conferences. A few key figures for the show in Lyon. We are meeting here for the first time in this beautiful city. 605 exhibitors, which is much more than what we expected at the beginning. Exhibitors and different brands. We are here in Hall 6 of Eurexpo with 6 different villages based on the star themes of the Équipe Auto. One is dedicated to body shop and painting. You have one on tires with an exhibit on the 130 years of the tire invented in 1898. We also have a village on reuse. This is the second time. This is a major trend that can only go forward. Reuse and remanufacturing. We also have the used car universe on the ecosystem of used cars. This is important. It represents synergy with the after sales and mobility show. And you have a startup village focused on the world of car washing. Yesterday we had a first day, which was a real success. We hope that today's subjects will stir your enthusiasm. You know, we're dealing with subjects which were not necessarily dealt with in the past. Here you have workshop waste and the second and third life of these waste products. You know, you have a couple very important sectors: used oils, batteries, and the catalytic converters. So now we're going to have also have a forum on 2- and 3-wheelers, because there is a convergence with the automobile sector, this real change in mobility that we will talk about later. Then we will have the work on the bodywork and electric vehicles. We're going to talk about remote diagnosis as well, which is electronic diagnosis based on the data coming from vehicles. There will also be a conference on maintenance information this afternoon. And tomorrow morning, we will talk about intervention on electric batteries and the training of the professionals in this sector. Your professionals, the employees, and students entering the sector. Everything is changing rapidly. We're trying to really be in line with developments. Équipe Auto was yesterday. Yesterday, we had the ceremony for the awards. 4 companies were rewarded: Michel, Michelin, BASF, and EV Shop. So don't hesitate to visit their stands and look at the innovations they have produced. So you have the floor. You have 2 minutes more. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Good morning. So I work with a magazine on auto recycling. You can help yourself to one. You know, we talk about end-of-life vehicles, workshop waste. The workshop waste is a broad subject, almost unlimited. You have almost as many recycling sectors as waste. It would be impossible in 45 minutes to deal with everything. So we have focused on 3 products which are emblematic. The used oils, you know, whose elimination officially started at the time of Mrs. Bouchardot some 40 years ago. And there have been, since then, different methods for calculating the valorization of these oils. You have the catalytic converters, which are a specific product. We have an expert who will talk about this, about the difficulty of recovering them. And then a second part of the discussion will deal with the electric batteries, which are today and tomorrow's waste product. Great deal of uncertainty, a lot of restructuring on the way. To start, we're going to ask a specialist of Mrs. REPUSSEAU from the FNA, the National Federation of the Automobile Craft. She's going to talk about the role played by this association in terms of a driver in this area. No, the microphone's not working. So the FNA and all of the professional organizations are accompanying the auto professionals. You know that 96% of the companies here are have less than 11 employees. So our role is to train the company managers and their employees with good practices by giving them manuals, guidelines, see if they're in line, in compliance, you know. So this involves a lot of travel day after day. You know, the automobile professionals have worked very quickly to organize their waste treatment and organized the circuits. You have three types of waste: the hazardous ones calling for special storage like oils, the non-dangerous like bumpers, etc., and inert waste like paper. Each type of waste has its own organization, and the company manager is in fact involved in a free recovery of waste. So the accompaniment is precious and highly determining. We're there to accompany them in reading their contracts, seeing if things are going well. If there are difficulties, we try to find a solution. So it is a day-to-day work of these organizations to be involved in the management of these wastes. Then when we talk about the waste, I'm sure you have a lot of advice. Do you feel that there is additional mobilization on the subject? You know that the professionals have always been mobilized around waste. What the information we get from the field is that when you have a recycling recovery circuit, that's good, but sometimes there are rejections because the storage conditions are not good for hazardous materials. But for non-dangerous waste like filters, etc., these can accumulate, and their management can be difficult for the company. The other point is the cost. We've seen an increase in the cost of recovery for the very small size companies. When there's litigation, very often we see that the cost is not up to the real cost, and so we cannot, have the cost totally billed to the consumer. You wear several hats because you also work with the end-of-life vehicles. Yes, the Federation has also worked to implement these different circuits. You know, it's essential that all the players be associated. So for the professional, you have a free recovery of these end-of-life vehicles, for example, at the national level and at the European regulation level. You know, Europe has several texts regarding batteries, end-of-life vehicles, and the defects in the actual design of vehicles that are taken into account. So the objective in the regulations is to recycle a maximum of materials to reduce the creation of new materials. So we have an end-of-life vehicle center to ensure that we can accompany the very small companies. Thank you. Now, maybe we can talk with Mr. ZAFFIRO, who's a small and new player here. I think you're quite specialized in the sector. Can you say a few words about the sector and perhaps an initial assessment of this new eco-organism? Let's explain what REP is in French. This is the producer's extended responsibility. When you are in after sales, you know, for 40 years we've collected used oils, in garages. But until January 2022, the collection of these used oils was paid for by the repair shop, etc. As of the 2022, the anti-waste law made it the responsibility of the producers of the oils, lubricants, etc., to pay for the recovery of these used materials. So CYCLEVIA is a company, it's an eco organization to carry out the free recovery of these used oils and lubricants. So CYCLEVIA is accredited since March 2022. We cover all of France with a number of service providers present today to collect these used oils and lubricants. And behind these lubricants, we are going to trace the possibility of their reuse. Between our accreditation and the end of 2022, 209 tons of used oil, 70% sent to regeneration.
La grande valeur ajoutée,
So as far as regeneration is concerned, with regards to the techniques of tomorrow, can you say a few words about that? What you need to know is that with this REP sector, we are trying to reorient the products, waste products, towards regeneration. Regeneration means that they be reused. Today, this has been implemented by 2 companies in France, this regeneration of waste products. But the regeneration has to be optimal so that the lubricants, the oils, can be reused with the latest generation engines, gearboxes, etc. This is not the case in France yet, and this is why there will be a call for tender as of January 2024 to be able to, in fact, set up a regeneration unit which will be able to meet the latest technical specs of the producers. Now, what is your vision of the ideal world in terms of regenerated products? Well, we talk about lubricants, oils, and this is the heart of our business, of course, and we see we are selling our lubricants and oils in bulk, but also in containers. And these containers are very expensive for the after-sales sector, 1,000 euros per ton. And these products are going to be transformed for energy use. What we want to do is recover all of the the packaging of these lubricants from, drums, etc., to have an even more virtuous sector. If I understand you correctly, the users, in fact, should be proud one day to use the regenerated lubricants. Yes, we know that we are in a downward market. We are an industry that's considered to be polluting, and so we are very attached to assuming our responsibilities to ensure that our products have as little impact as possible on the environment. So now, in fact, let's talk to Aurélien DUMARCHE from CHIMIREC. For the producers, what are the impacts and consequences? First of all, you need to know that the collection and recovery system is very well established. We have a good national coverage, whether it's for the used oils or waste. In a workshop, you can have some 30 different types of waste product, dangerous or not, and we need to have solutions adapted to the different workshops. The sector is well set up already, well in place, and it is constantly moving to adapt to the new waste products appearing in the market. We'll talk about this later when we start talking about the electric batteries for vehicles. But when we talk about electric vehicles, we talk about the batteries, but you also have the cost of electronic and electric waste, which 10 to 15 years ago were hardly recovered and collected. Today, we are collecting these waste products as well, setting up new sorting systems, because the objective is not just to stack them in a garage. We want to be able to perhaps collect the 30 different types of waste that exist. We also want to advance step by step to ensure that the garages, the workshops, we're going to wait for the announcement to end. If it's your car, be sure to pick it up. But up here there's a DS7 which is parked in the wrong place. So, nobody has a DS7? No, okay. So we can continue here. In fact, we can little by little, in fact, achieve the sorting of new waste products, and thus, in fact, we see more and more types of waste. Today you have waste products which exist, but we're beginning to organize the recycling, regeneration systems that are being set up now in garages. For example, the sorting of brake discs from other types of metal products, try to better orient these waste products and to valorize them as much as possible, financially speaking. Yes, financially for the garages, of course, because as you said earlier, the cost of waste treatment is very expensive, and we are also thinking about the professionals to see what a vehicle is made up of. If we look at the, in fact, the vehicles today, we need to be able to set up recycling projects which will generate recycled materials that can then be re-injected into production, especially as original equipment. There's the question of the storage of electric batteries as well, and I think that you know that soon there's going to be a new CHIMIREC center. Yes, our new site is going to be inaugurated in an industrial piece of land of 6 hectares at Aulnay-sous-Bois. We have a bunker created for lithium so as to be able to avoid the propagation of fires triggered by lithium. You know that in the world of these waste treatment companies, there was a figure given recently whereby there was a 150% increase in fires, and generally these fires are triggered by lithium batteries, not just from the world of automobiles, but also from the light mobility systems. So we need to deal with that risk level, which is going to be removed from the workshop, but will be at our level. So Aulnay will be the biggest waste treatment center, well, at least for France, yes. We'll come back to the electric battery issue later. Now, we're going to talk about the catalytic converters in the exhaust lines. I know that Mr. DELAGE from HENSEL Recycling has a lot to say about this. Your group, HENSEL, was created 25 years ago, 250 employees, working in 5 continents, some 10 subsidiaries. And I think that we, in fact, are working on 4,000 tons, 4 million catalytic converters per year. Can you tell us a little bit about your activity? So we have the luck of drawback of working in a special context, because the catalytic converter is it's specific. Most are not aware of its value. Only the companies that work in this business have an idea of its value. And so this leads to some fantasy in this profession, because if you don't know the product, if we talk of copper, you know, for example, everybody knows the prices of copper. So anyone can come see you and make a proposal and give you a value for that copper. So the owner of the DS7 SH407 SR is requested to immediately move his vehicle. Otherwise, it will be towed. It will be towed away. So it will be impounded if it is not immediately removed. So the first specificity here is the unknown value of the product, that is to say, the catalytic converter. Secondly, as most of our colleagues here, we have the pleasure of giving people money. It's a nice job. What you want to do is create a relation of trust with your partners to ensure that you are paid the right price. We can envisage all kinds of things. We see all kinds of things in the market. This is what makes our business complex. You have some irregularities that continue to exist in the market. Regularly, we see people paying in cash. You see illegal exports taking place. So we need to fight. Everybody knows that every sector has its problems, but in our sector of activity, sometimes the competition is really at the limit of legality. So we had a crazy COVID period because we went from 1 to 3, a threefold increase in the value of the merchandise, which was a constraint for us, of course. This is something which is quite specific because this is a considerable contribution to the end-of-life vehicle centers. You know, it's a very important element, and the battle is fierce here for a product. At the time of the COVID, it was 60 euros per piece, per part. Now we're around 110, 170 euros. And, you know, so now we're back down to 90 euros for the part. So that's quite a crazy evolution in the price. So the difficulty here in the sector is to create that trustful relationship so that you always buy the product at its rightful value. Well, the radium, I think, has seen an increase. You've gone from 20,000 to 750,000 euros a kilo, and you know, there's very little in a catalytic converter. You know, our business is the recovery of precious metals. You know, so the catalytic converter, what's interesting is, in fact, the precious metal. And when we saw the explosion in prices of these metals, as in all activities, this brings in a lot of players. You know, the illegal sector has significantly increased because the financial interest is great. You know, you find vehicles which have seen their equipment stolen, the parts stolen. You have illegal exports as well. And this is why all of us are trying to fight this. Let me say that once again, the nicest job we have today is to create serenity, transparency in the activity, and to fight, as I said, the illegal trafficking here. You know that our group is working to undertake a major ethical strategy whereby our company has linked up with a number of major names in the recycling of precious metals, whereby we sign a charter to and commit ourselves to avoid carrying out any illegal illegal activities, to avoid, in fact, the reception of illegally acquired precious materials, to avoid fencing of these materials. And you know that if we look at the major end-of-life vehicle centers, there are companies which have structured themselves in a very professional way. We try to offer solutions for these new needs that are appropriate. I think that your waste is an asset. In addition to that, we don't want to keep the question of traceability is important in this sector, especially at the border level. You know, the catalytic converter today is considered a hazardous waste with all of the constraints it implies. And so it has to be the subject of legal transfers with notification, transfer, etc. And these things are not necessarily respected by the entire profession. When we talk about the catalytic converters of ICE engines, are you preparing for other products to recycle? Yes, the average age of the vehicles coming into the end-of-life vehicle centers, you know, are considerable. You know, we have up to 2035, you know, but we have started anticipating this date. Our company has oriented itself towards similar types of products, you know, which have to respect the same type of process in terms of treatment, etc. This is why we're also interested in vehicle calculators, which have other precious materials. We're also going to extend our work to include electronic products that we're going to find in the electrical vehicles. And we're also accompanying and anticipating the recycling with the manufacturers today, the preparation for the development of hydrogen engines. And here again, we want to prepare for the recovery of their precious metals. What about the electrics components? Well, the electric batteries are a different product. You know, to treat the electric batteries is not part of our business model. Well, that's just as well, because you have other actors there. For example, Johan Renault, who is a small company, 24 hectares, 200 employees. How many vehicles treated per year? 23,000.
Well, first question, how do you actually proceed with the collection and the dismantling or destruction of those products? So what about the first electric vehicles you'll collect? Well, as I said, in fact, 23,000 vehicles per year. So, and we would dismantle 2/3 of those vehicles. That is, in fact, 13,000 vehicles per year. 1% of such vehicles are electric vehicles, which means approximately 150 vehicles, electric vehicles, which are dismantled in our company. So 150 lithium batteries and the shocks and the types of impacts might be different. The vehicle might be burned, might have been hit, and the battery can be damaged. In certain cases, that's visible. In other cases, not. So for us, this represents a major issue. First, we need to train all of our people along the entire chain, including the drivers, the handlers, and those in charge of dismantling the vehicle, including issues like electric hazards and the risk of fire. Then the next step is, what would we do with the battery dismantled? So the 40% of our activity is to sell, in fact, the engine and the gearbox. And with the electric vehicles, well, this means that that percentage it is going to be somehow has to be compensated. Then next issue is how to store the battery. Shall I store the entire, the battery or the module? Should I, in fact, remove the cells from the battery? And another major subject is how shall I store the vehicles themselves? So we know we are on 24 hectares, and I think in the future the 24 hectares will not be enough. 150 vehicles per. We have like islets, so something. So about 120 vehicles per islet. And for the electric vehicles, in fact, we group them in 4, separated by 10 meters each. So, and we would have, therefore, to increase the surface area, maybe multiplied by 10. That means a major revamp for the company, yes. So you recover batteries, and the next question is whether you can, on a regular basis, find a market for them. Because you remember that we talked about the electric risks and training and personal equipment systems. And the issue we are also facing to be sure that we can resell and properly valorize those different items, for reuse in a car or for other types of energy storage system, then we would like to have the battery in deep-seated areas where we can store the batteries, and we need to keep control of those batteries during the storage period. So we are still looking for people with the competence, with the knowledge, but then the question is whether we shall sell batteries to be used in other vehicles, or maybe use those same batteries for storing energy, for example, used in wind power, for wind power energy storage. And what can we resort to retrofitting? So basically what I mean is that many of those issues need to be answered. We're still waiting for answers. So Mrs. Schmidt, you're present from Renault, and I can feel that you are impatient to take the floor. So the unit you are in charge of, the new Flin factory, how does it work there? Well, maybe I should say a few words about this circular economy factory. It was established a year ago to start with, and the background is the following. Renault has decided to refocus on the value chains and with the establishment of new entities. You certainly have heard about amperes for the and also the ICE vehicles mobilized for mobility. So different entities have been established, and then we also have a brand new approach, which is known as the future is neutral. In other words, developing circular economy solutions, but at an industrial scope. So that's where we're working. The starting point is a sort of awareness raising to the effect that the automotive industry does take up a significant amount of natural resources. That's true for platinum, for copper, for lithium, even though there aren't so many electric batteries today. But the share of the automotive industry in terms of raw material consumption is quite high. Now, we know that there is a problem in terms of the availability of such raw materials, and we know that, there is a limit to the amount of resources available, so it's difficult to extract copper. In terms of concentration, you have to dig more earth capacity in order to actually retrieve copper. And this, of course, has issues, including geopolitical issues, and also the need to have a full control of the supply chain. So Europe is not well placed, so to speak, in terms of resource availability and refining capability. So that's the reason why we are currently converting the industry from the RCE model to the electric system. Cobalt, lithium will be more used, and we know that there is likely to be, the need will be 7 times more in terms of cobalt or lithium consumption. So therefore it's important for us to come up with a circular economy solution, and this will also help to decarbonize our industry. We need to act in such a way that the vehicles, end-of-life vehicles, should be a sort of they should be feeding the industry in terms of its needs, its new needs. Vehicles can be recycled up to 85%, and yet new vehicles incorporate only 30% of material that has been recycled. In other words, there is a gap. So our best source, in fact, is represented by the end-of-life vehicles. We need to recycle materials and equipment into other vehicles. So basically what I mean is reuse and remanufacturing of parts, and also extending the lifetime of the components, so to give them a second lease of life, so to speak. So I imagine that you have been working on that issue a long time ago when you established INDRA, focusing on engineering, and your Gaia is also one of your subsidiaries, also trying to develop its activities in that area. When we heard Johan Renault, who said that he has difficulties while acting, concretely, whether it be technically speaking or financially speaking. So what about your case? Well, our vision is that Renault has been somewhat sort of a pioneer in terms of circular economy. For example, we started remanufacturing. Remanufacturing started 70 years ago in Choisy, which has then this in fact was re-engineering of injectors, engines, steering columns, and so on, and remanufacturing of electric vehicles will also be taken on board. INDRA, that was established 20 years ago between Renault and Suez. It's sort of a joint venture specializing in the dismantling and managing of end-of-life vehicles. Gaia, 100% Renault, and specialized in the repair of traction batteries and the recycling of propylene, copper, and starting from those companies that have been established years ago by people who had vision, we want this to be expanded to a sort of an industrial scope, and also include the closed-loop recycling of the batteries in order to retrieve, lithium and other substances. This is a way for us to secure the supply. What we actually need for our future batteries. So, in other words, we do have a number of assets available who are operational, and we also intend to come up with new assets. That's in fact the recycling of batteries in a closed loop. So we therefore need need to expand beyond the traditional realm of the automotive industry. We are talking about metal refining, so those are next to the vehicle, to the automotive industry, but it's very important for us to expand into these areas. Those are necessary for us if we are to meet our environmental commitment. And of course, the regulations do drive us in that direction. You know, the battery directive and the directive on the management of end-of-life vehicles. So all of those regulations do push us in that direction. Then you also have this new future undertaking, which is called The Future is Neutral. We are gathering the necessary equity, necessary capital. That's not only to meet the needs of Renault, but to come up with a sort of circular economy that will be open. It's not just for Renault, but also open to other companies. So it will be a sort of a gigafactory, and our purpose is to come up with a circular economy system for the automotive world at large. Well, we have been talking so far about renovation, reuse, and the management of the material. And we have a specialist in that area, Mr. Sana, who is working for SNAM and located in the Ariège, Aveyron and Isère departments. So they recently decided to focus on the material recovery and revalorization, and after having worked for some time on reuse and remanufacturing. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. SNAM is a battery recycling company, whether it be nickel, cadmium or SALIN or lithium batteries, lithium ion, rechargeable, and so on. So we established our company in 1977 in Aveyron and Isère, so that's not far from here. And as part of our recycling process, since we dismantled the batteries, in particular electric and hybrid vehicles batteries, we have developed an expertise and know-how on the dismantling. I mean, doing all of that carefully. And we also developed diagnosis tools in order to identify whether or not the modules in the batteries can be reused for applications which were less greedy in terms of energy consumption, and that would be a way for us to expand the lifetime of the batteries. So it would be a pity to just throw away systems that can be reused for batteries, for energy storage. Now, we have decided to make this to go into this direction. We developed a company known as Phoenix Battery. We have been involved in research, in particular with the CEA, Commissariat à l'Énergie Atomique, and we early this year we stopped to go in that direction. The reason is that, in fact, if you want to industrialize a process, you need to have full control of, what you need, your suppliers, and we have difficulties getting the automotive industries to commit themselves. They can't tell us that for a given battery would have to be actually sent for recycling. So difficult to actually foresee that. When we started, well, batteries in terms of diversity was reduced. Now, today, if you take into account the different manufacturers, the different models, and even in the same model, you can have version 1, version 2, or even 3 of a battery. And when you manufacture a battery, you need to go through different steps like certification, and this, of course, is costly, including certification UN 3833. Now, what also happened is that, well, fine, even the second, the recycled or remanufactured products are expensive. And the issue is that we have to cope with products coming from China. You just have to walk around here, you will see some of them. And so LFP batteries with limited, noble, let's say, metals are included. So, and Philippe was saying that, in fact, they would try to recycle and regenerate and gain money. And I think the recycling batteries is not necessarily easy, and in terms of generating profits. So recycling, in fact, we come back to the basic material, and if there is no noble material used in the batteries, then it's useless for us. That's the reason why we have decided to close Phoenix Battery. Conversely, we decided to invest 22 million euros for the for the recycling. That's in fact the second lease of life, till the second death, so to speak. Now, there will be an end one day to the battery, and we need to expand the capacity to process those batteries between 2010 and 2022. So during that time period, 5.8 million vehicles equipped with lithium batteries, and 1,150,000 in France. And 70% of those sales were during the past 3 years. So we will not be recycling batteries from those vehicles, but rather batteries coming from, the technical centers or resulting from recall by manufacturers. And then, of course, there will be a number of giga factories in France that would generate hundreds of thousands of tons of waste, which will have to be dealt with, and that's not within 10 years. It's in fact for tomorrow, or I would even say it already happens today. So next concern, which is a reality for all technical centers: how do you manage all the risks involved? Well, first of all, we have to be careful. And the first thing is to probably train our people, to raise the awareness of our people, to equip them. We have equipment, specific equipment on site in order to provide 7/7, 24/24 surveillance. And of course, we would avoid storing damaged batteries or batteries which are deemed to be hazardous. We wouldn't keep such batteries for weeks or months. So for such batteries, we have a fast track. In other words, such batteries which are damaged will be dealt with as a priority. Therefore, it's important to have a sort of a proper coordination between the place where it is removed, the battery is taken, and then make sure that the battery is processed very quickly, and the packaging has to be recovered, because in fact those are extremely expensive, between 20 to 40,000 euros for that packaging. It can be recycled, of course, but if you want to transport a battery weighing 700 kilos, then you would have to transport a box which would in fact be 5 tons, in weight. So who is prepared to pay all of that, all those expenditures? Well, that's a good question. Who is going to pay? The first thing I can say is that not us. We're not going to be the one paying. Having said this, those who place those products on the market are now fully aware of this issue. We do have good cooperation with the car manufacturers in order to come up with solutions. Having said this, there are still a number of gaps, like delivery of the packaging itself, the collection, the cost of extracting the battery from the vehicle. In certain cases, the vehicle and the battery has to be sent to a qualified dealership. not necessarily, necessarily the person or the small center just next door, but the one which is located maybe 5 kilometers away. So cooperation between the automotive manufacturer, the end-of-life vehicles, the transporters, and ourselves, all of us need to work together. Well, we can say that basically there are plenty of questions for which we're still waiting for an answer, whether it be from a technical point of view and financial point of view. So therefore, this is, I would say, a subject for a future roundtable. Anything else to add? Well, I just wanted to say that as part of our activities with PhysioTAC, that's an international association of automotive engineers. And we have drafted a white paper, in other words, describing the current situation regarding electric vehicles from its design till the end of life. That paper is available if you type visit us, and you will certainly find that paper. We have also been working with Indra, involved in the management of batteries at the end of the vehicle life. So this paper does describe the current situation when it comes to managing end-of-life vehicles, in particular electric vehicles. Well, I think it is time for us to thank you very much. We have to stop at that stage. Yes, indeed, I think that we'll certainly be dealing with these issues during our next events. So within 5 minutes, we would have to deal with another subject, not really dealt with so far within REPUSSEAU. That's in fact the engine-powered 2- or 3-wheelers. So let's meet here within 5 minutes.